everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Susana Pareto Swap. I'm the founder and executive director of Vanguard Culture. We are a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to advancing San Diego's creative industry workforce. This workshop is part of our Forum Professional Development Series, which presents a variety of programs and workshops aimed to give creative professionals the tools and the resources to make a living doing what they love. For more information, please visit vanguardculture.org and follow us on YouTube for access to dozens of free professional development workshops that are streaming now. And I'll put all of that in the links in the chat for you. A big thanks to the California Arts Council, the Prebys Foundation, and the City of San Diego, and our generous donors for making our work possible. We are so honored to be partnering with finance and tourism leader Dr. Brian S. Lesson to help our creative community develop strong financial skills. And this workshop is designed to give you that empowerment. It's designed to be interactive. So please feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and I will do my best to pass them on during our discussion. We hope this introductory session on financial literacy will help you gain the tools to help advance your arts business and get a handle on your personal finances. Dr. Lesson has been teaching college students and his community for over 10 years and has realized that there are very few safe spaces to talk about money, personal habits, and debt. His goal is to help people define their financial identity and to battle society's desires to keep his network from building wealth. As a husband, father of two, and business professional, he has created content that will engage the conversation to make better decisions with money, to spend on what matters, while saving, to instill new values and ultimately create a financial legacy. And with that, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Brian Lesson. Thank you so much for being here, Brian. I will pass the torch to you, and I will hang around to help field any questions with the audience.
Awesome. How is everyone? How are you guys doing? Doing well? Some thumbs up, at least? Yes? Okay, great. Let me share my screen here. And I'll put the agenda up for a second, so maybe we can jot some, you can see my screen, Susanna? You're good?
Yes, we're good. Thank you.
So I'll put the agenda up for a second. Maybe we can jot down some initial questions that you may have based on this. She introduced me more as an expert. I would say that I want to continue conversations about this topic because I think that we don't have a lot of places where we can feel comfortable to discuss the things that are going on in our day-to-day lives, right? So we're going to start with the agenda. As you look through, we'll look at some focus, our spending habits. We'll look at some societal norms that kind of terrify me, some debt methods for payoff, and some saving and habits. And I have some links to some calculators and a budget that I'll speak about, as well as just some content that I think is good for us to keep this conversation going in our daily lives. Okay, so with that, we will talk about our identity, right? And for all of you, your identity focuses on so many things that you do in your life, right? Your creativity, that you are an artist or an actor, right? And maybe you're a mother or a father, and we have these identities. And I don't think that we spend enough time focusing on our financial goals and understanding what our financial identity is. And I think that most Americans are in, right, one of these four brackets. They're focusing on debt elimination, right? Paying off debt, consumer debt, which would be car loans, student loans, credit cards, maybe a mortgage, maybe a payday loan that you have out. If you have a handle on your debt, you're probably looking at your monthly margin. And monthly margin to me is that conversation about living paycheck to paycheck and being able to have some space to be able to breathe and to be able to focus on really what's next, right, in your financial journey. And that monthly margin is important. Or you are trying to build a savings safeguard, and that savings safeguard could be an emergency fund, or a larger buffer. J.L. Collins calls it FU money. It's money that you can make a decision based on. You could leave a job, you could leave a gig, you could possibly leave an apartment if you needed to. It's money that is there for you to be able to have that safeguard. And then finally, maybe you're looking into the future and you're trying to secure your financial future. Okay. So we're assuming that we are in this space and place. And if you are at the end, kudos to you. I think for the majority of us on this call, we are somewhere probably in the middle. Okay. So the first thing that I always ask individuals is, what are they spending, right? And a lot of times I just kind of get this like shoulder shrug or I don't know, or you're really specific on one line item of your spending, but there are other spaces in your financial lifestyle that you're not necessarily sure. So I want us to ask ourselves and put down on paper what our spending is. What are we spending weekly? What are we spending monthly? What are we spending annually? And remember that this has nothing to do with how much money you make. Your salary is not a factor. We're just looking at spending habits. I also want you to think about your goals and ask yourself what you would like to be spending in 5, 10, 15 years from now, and how much we want to be spending at retirement. Okay. And we'll talk about some statistics in a couple minutes about retirement and the importance of focusing on that. Then there are some line items that we have to kind of look at and understand. What are we spending on, say, groceries or gas or subscriptions? And they all kind of creep up on us, week to week. And are we able to set very specific goals that we can focus on? I know inflation is there, but we know that groceries week over week don't drastically change. They're slowly changing with time, and we can manage that process, right? So I'm not saying that it is not expensive to live where you're living, or that groceries are not significantly more than they were in the past. But these are things that are out of our control. What we can control is our spending habits. Okay, so a lot of individuals ask me, well, what should I be spending and where should I be spending it? So a lot of financial professionals talk about kind of these three buckets, right? And the first is your savings. And are you saving money? A, and how much should I be saving? And we should be saving about 15%, 10% if we're starting off, right? So we can build a habit. But 10 to 15% in your savings. And this could be cash. This could be an emergency fund, which I'll talk about. It could be a short-term savings goal for a computer, or it could be for a vacation. It could be a long-term savings goal for a new car or a down payment for a home, retirement savings, and investments. Okay, so that's one bucket. The second bucket, where we spend the majority of our money, are our fixed costs, the costs that don't change every month. Our rent, our mortgage, our utilities, our internet, insurance, our car loans, if we have them, phones, and our subscriptions. And then the last is the variable costs. Those are the costs that ebb and flow each month. So we don't necessarily spend exactly the same amount of money. With my goal here is that we really are focusing on the variable cost number, and we're trying to hit that every month. Everything else is really dictated for us already if we look at the budget in the way that I recommend. And that's kind of the thought process. So we're looking at a single number, and we're trying to hit that number through a handful of categories. Okay, we're going to open the floor up to some questions and kind of really talk about all this stuff in just a couple minutes. But I want to get through some content. So unfortunately, we have a lot of pressure from society. Susanna and I have talked about this quite a bit, right? Our social media feeds are toxic for our finances, right? Our friends and family are constantly giving us advice. And we have some norms that are out there that we just have to really step back and think about, right? Three that kind of just make me really anxious is an average wedding costs $30,000 in the United States. This is not San Diego. San Diego is much higher. Average in the United States, $30,000. Average new vehicle is right now approaching $50,000, right? And the average home, I don't even want to talk about it, right? 893,000. But the average rent is also $2,135. So these are societal norms that we look for, right? The American dream, wedding, right? Having a car in the driveway and having a home. And we have to really disrupt this. We have to understand what the norm is for us. Now, you may have purchased a home, you may have bought a new vehicle, you may have gotten married in the past, right? And you may have spent some of these dollar amounts. But the idea is, I don't think that these are healthy numbers. And I think that we have to just be realistic about what that looks like in the future, okay? Some other debt norms. The average car payment is $716 right now in the United States a month. Average student loan is about 300,000, and the average credit card balance is $6,473. And the reason I want to bring these up is that this is the average. So if you have a car payment and it is high, that is normal. We want to make sure that we kind of break that cycle, but I want to realize that you're not alone, and this is a conversation that we have to have, and we have to be able to discuss this openly and honestly, right? When we go to a car dealership, right, they're going to say something to you like, hey, you're getting your loan for $400. That's so much cheaper than the average, right? And it allows us to maybe think and process and make a decision that's really outside of our means. Okay, so loans, I can see the age demographic here on on the call, and I teach students, but I do want to just talk about interest, right? And for us to be really aware of interest. So if we go back, the average American has $6,473 in credit card debt, right? If the credit card, it's a pretty low percentage, unfortunately, right now is at 20%. If you don't pay it the first month and you're paying it off the second month, you're going to pay $107 to borrow that money. If you want to pay it back in a year, the minimum monthly payment to pay that off in a year would be $600, $599.62. You'd be paying $722 in interest. And if you wanted to pay that back in 10 years by paying the minimum payment, look at the interest amount. It would be significantly higher than the loan itself, right? I know a lot of you know about interest rates. That's not what I'm here for. What I do want you to be realistic about is that there are sources online that can allow us to make a really smart decision financially by looking all of this stuff up. I don't know about you, but when I got a student loan, the financial aid office did not give me what my monthly payment was going to be. They gave me the total amount of the loan. They never did the mathematics for me, right? And I just got the bill 4 years later. And Bankrate is a really great resource that I'll send you some links to, that we can look up amounts. If we are going to borrow money, let's figure out what that's going to do to us next month, right? The month after we take that loan out, and really see what the financial burden may be, or if it's going to be a really good decision for us, right? So if you do have debt, we're looking at trying to eliminate that, right? So that we can save. And there are two methods to the debt payoff madness, right? And they're called the snowball method and the avalanche method. And what we want to look at is, in my opinion, the best method if you have traditional consumer debt, credit cards, car loan, student loans, is we look at this snowball method. The snowball method is there for us to be able to, get some wins throughout this debt journey, because wins are something that we're going to need in order to keep us activated in this journey, of paying off our past decisions. And the snowball method is listing your smallest debt first, right, all the way down to your largest debt, right? So if you had a personal loan for $50, and you had a credit card loan for $200, and you had a second credit card loan for $500, and you had a student loan of 5,000, the personal loan would go first, credit card one, credit card two, and then your student loan would be last at your largest loan. We would pay that $50 off, hopefully within the month, and we would pay that off, and then we would roll that $50 into the next loan. So we would be paying $50 on the credit card, and once we paid the $200 credit card off, we would then be paying $250, the first loan and the second loan, into the third loan, right? And we would do that until we would pay the student loan off. The interesting thing is with these dollar amounts, we would pay the first $50 loan off in the first month. We would pay the second loan off in 2 months if we rolled that over. We would pay the third loan off in 3 months if we rolled that over. And last, we would pay 4 months later, we would pay all of our debt off, right? If we just kept taking the money and rolling it over, okay? And that is what I would recommend if you're on a debt journey, to focus on progressively paying that off. The avalanche method is there if you have a high interest loan. So if you've borrowed a payday loan, for instance, right, that loan will probably have something like a 200% interest rate, right? So you're going to borrow that, and right away you're going to have to pay 4 times the amount that you actually borrowed in order to get it back. We want to pay that off first, even though it may not necessarily be our highest loan because the interest rate is so high. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay. So again, some more societal norms is our margin, right? Our savings. And almost 80% of Americans carry comprehensive car insurance, right? Which I was kind of impressed with that number, to be honest, right? However, right, our savings, which to me is insurance for our life, right? Our financial life. 37% of Americans can't afford a $500 emergency. 57% of Americans can't afford a $1,000 emergency. And if you think it's about income, people making $100,000 a year or higher can't pay it off either, at 20% range, right? That's $1,000 emergency. So it's not necessarily a income problem, right? It may be a savings habit problem in order for us to deal with some of these emergencies that come our way, right? So if we have new tires on the car and we get a flat tire, right, and we don't have the money to pay for that emergency, we're going to put it on a credit card in order to get to work or to get to the next gig. And what we want to do is we don't want to give a corporation the opportunity to make money off of ourselves, right? So anytime I look at a loan, I always call it by the name of the company, right? So my car, right? Honda owns my car until I pay it off, right? Nelnet or Sally Mae owns my education until I pay it off. If you say it that way, it feels real uncomfortable. And it should start making you, right, focus on making sure that all of those things in that line item are yours to keep, right, to be able to do that. Okay. So savings, we want to look at some habit building, right? And the habits are doing small incremental increases throughout your careers, right? So we want to start with building up a habit. And my first habit is, let's not be part of those percentages, right? So let's take care of or look at the $400 or the $1,000. If you have that, that's fantastic, right? Let's roll into an emergency fund, especially in the creative community, right? We want to have a buffer so that we can focus on what our goals are in the future, right? If we don't get a gig, if something falls, right? If a contract falls off, we want to make sure that we have a buffer so that we can continue on our financial journey, right? So most financial professionals talk about a 3 to 6 month of spending saved in a checking account. Nothing fancy. It's there, and it's there for an emergency. I want to be able to easily access it. I don't want it tied up in an investment. I want to be able to use it, and I want to be able to use it for reasons, for emergency reasons, and maybe my apartment all of a sudden doesn't feel safe, and I need to move, and I'm going to be able to dip into this, and I'm going to have the freedom to do so. If I have that, then we should be looking at our retirement, right? And again, remember, 15% should be going towards savings. If we can get to that 15% up to our retirement goals, we should be much better off in the future, right? So for a lot of you, you may be independent contractors, or you may be in the gig economy. So we want to look at a solo 401, okay? Or if your employer has a 401k, that's even better, right? Because they're probably going to contribute to it. Or if you're jumping from gig to gig, or organization from organization, and that's part of your lifestyle, you may want to look into a Roth IRA. Okay, and these are just really smart tax-deferred accounts. You also should have some sort of buffer for short-term and long-term goals. I always say, if you buy a new car, you have to understand that 10 years later, you are going to buy another car. So that shouldn't be a surprise to you. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves for future decision making. Okay. And then last, if you have all of these buckets being filled, then we should be looking at investment strategies, but not until then. Okay. And that's kind of the thought process there. Okay. So that's some saving. Um, I look at just kind of why saving is important and why interest is important. And this is based on the audience that I'm looking at. This may be a little clouded, but an annual salary of 37,000, right? If you save that 10%, we divide that by 12, we're putting $308 a month away, right? Maybe our employer is matching 5%. That'd be fantastic, right? That's going to give us another 1850. So now we're putting $462 away, right? Our employer is putting 154, we're putting 308, right? And then we have to invest it, right, with a 6% return. Now I teach students, so that I know that this is a long period of time. But if you start early, the earlier you start, the larger larger the nest egg and the legacy is at the end, right? And we're looking at hitting that $1 million mark for retirement. Now, what you'll notice here is that this person never got a raise. They are making $37,000 for their entire career. And we know that that typically does not happen. Okay. So we can look at these and think about what this looks like for you, depending on your salary and the amount of time that you have for retirement. You have to start, if you're not starting, you have to start right away, so that you can get as much of this compound interest as possible, right? $5 is better than $0. That's all there is to it. Okay. I use something called a zero-based budget, and the zero-based budget I will send to you, and it really just kind of automates your spending practices, right? And it gets you into understanding what you're spending on a line-for-line basis. This is not going, if you don't do a budget, this is not going to be fun for the first 3 months. There's going to be some mistakes that get made. And we want to be clear about that. We want to understand that the first 3 months are part of a learning process, okay? And we have to just be realistic about that. Now, a zero-based budget means that at the end of the month, I should have $0, right? And I should allocate all my money specifically, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is have my income, and I'm going to pay myself first. I'm going to provide a safety net for myself, and I'm going to put money into savings. That's going to be the first thing that I do. Then I'm going to pay all my fixed costs, all the bills that I'm aware of that are going to be coming in month to month, and then my variable costs last. I should be down to $0, right? I grew up in a family where my father would always say, whatever's left is what I save, right? And in reality, that's not necessarily helping anyone, because right, there's all of these things that we want and that we could use that would make our lives easier, right? But we're not necessarily giving it a place and space in the budget. So this is the zero-based budget platform, and you can use mine. I gave you a sample with that $37,000 salary, and there's some really hard numbers to look at and really absorb. So they may be outside of that, that 50, 30, 15 space. Okay. And the last thing I want to talk about before we just kind of have an open conversation, just wanted to give you some content for us to think about and have some ideas resonate. Is that we have the luxury of being in a space where we can automate this process for us, right? So we want to think about a bank I'm not a fan of any bank, right? So I'll be clear about that. But I want a bank to be easy for you, and I want it to be convenient for you, right? So that you can use it on a regular basis. And that money, your money should, from your pay, should go and be direct deposited into your bank account, right? Or if you get a gig, you're putting it into the bank account. From there, hopefully you're putting it into retirement. That would be done pre-tax or post-tax, depending on what kind of account you have, right? Then automatically you would put money into specific savings buckets, right? I always tell people that the emergency fund should be in a secondary bank, something different, maybe not as easy to get to, maybe a credit union, something that I'm not going to be able to easily toggle, right, cash from one account to the other. That's for the future, right? Into the savings account, into our checking account. We're paying all of our bills first and then our variable costs at the end, right? My family, all of our what we would call fund money that we have, it all comes out of the bank on the first day of the month, and it's all cash. And once that envelope is empty, it's over, right? That fund is not, that pocket of money is not there. So we have an envelope that has money for things to do with the kids throughout the week, right? So if we get ice cream on a Tuesday because because my kids are having a bad day, that money comes out of the rest of the week, and I'm not able to spend that over the weekend, right? So just being thoughtful about your buckets, so that it's not a total amount that you are pulling from. Okay. So that's just some content that I wanted to throw out there. I wanted to be able to have some conversations about, but I know that the people that I teach, this is the majority of the slides are the things that they are losing sleep over. And I wanted to just address them first and then kind of open the conversation up to Susanna and just have a really safe space to maybe ask questions to each other and to talk about this really difficult topic. So that is all
Thank
I
you,
have as
Brian.
far as
This is
context.
awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. I love this conversation because, as an immigrant, first generation immigrant, my mother came to this country and sort of just figured it out, and we had a roof over our head and all the things. But, we come, at least I feel like I come from a culture where talking about money is not a safe thing to do. We're not allowed to talk about money, and women in particular are always told no, 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 like it can be a cultural thing, it can be a sort of societal norm thing, but generally it's not something that people talk about. They don't feel comfortable talking about money. And only recently have I gone into a space where I'm empowering myself to understand money better, to understand money management and future planning. And it's taken a lot of discomfort on my part to be able to have those difficult conversations with people and really understand how powerful it is to get a hold of understanding your finances and planning for your future. So thank you for providing this safe
Sure.
space for us here. It's really important what we're doing, and especially creative professionals who we're always, going from the next job to the next job to the next job. Roth IRA and the 401k sound like
Sure.
this big magical thing that, you know, what is that, right? And I think for many years as a theater professional and a musician, a singer, when I was gigging, that seemed like something you couldn't possibly imagine having in your future. But things are way more accessible to us now in this modern age. And we've dropped a bunch of resources here for you all to go and explore later. Um, but let's open up the conversation now to the full group, and
Yeah.
maybe
Please
we can
stop
kind of
sharing.
start there. You're welcome to just, yeah, thank you. Maybe just sort of unmute yourself and, or raise your hand or something, and I can call on you. But let's start it up. Like, what has been the biggest barrier for you to understanding your spending habits or your goals? Anybody want to raise your hand?
Yeah, my biggest thing is retirement.
Uh-huh.
I'll get a job and it's like a year, but I'm mainly just working, like you say, contract to contract. And so there's gaps. And in those gaps, I'll lose what I've kind of started. Um, So glad all that's over. So now we're going to start nice and fresh. What is the
Yeah.
best way to start a Roth IRA? Do I just simply go to the bank, or you said like a solo 401? I know that the city has like a 401k, and I'm about to start driving, so that's why I'm I have my camera off. Um uh, there's something with this. I think this is a federal. I don't even know the name of it now, but I just don't know what to do next as far
Sure.
as retirement. The best way to just start, and what's kind of safest to where if I miss a month, like with insurance, I don't lose the whole thing and have to start over. Like what can I
Yeah.
do?
Sure. An investment you can put in, right? You can adjust, right? So
Right.
it's not there for you to, you're not going to lose it if you don't put into it. Like an insurance plan. I understand what you mean.
Right.
Um, so Imani, are you working for the city?
No, I worked for a nonprofit,
Hmm.
and that was their retirement. Like they took on this,
Great.
it's not the city. I guess it's like a federal, like a national. I'm not even sure. Maybe
Okay.
I think it's a California. It's a
Okay.
California retirement.
So
Wish I
where
had the
did you
name.
put those funds, or are they just sitting in a retirement account?
They're just sitting, exactly. They're just sitting there, and yeah, they're just
Okay.
and
So
I just
the
get a
thing, I'm not
yeah,
going to tell you where to invest. It's just not something that I do, right?
I
So,
understand that.
but the idea is you want to look at spaces and places that are low fee, right? There's one that
Yes.
we'll talk about that shares your name, and it's called Vanguard. Um, uh, so,
Nice.
and it is a low fee investment space, right?
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
the thing is that there's no advisor with you. So you're making the decisions on your own. But the idea
Scary.
behind this is that that money should be growing, which it's not, right? So the money should
Yes.
be growing, right? And we need to make sure that we are being thoughtful about that. And then the idea behind that is for me, for my savings goals, if I start with a $5 goal, meaning I open the account up, right? It is now
Yeah.
a part of my bank, and and I'm having $5, right, go from one place to the other, right? I think that we can probably manage that, right?
Right.
However, it's already activated. So the idea is when I do get when I do get more frequent income, that I can already adjust it. If it doesn't exist, right, and it's not a platform that you're using, then you're probably just going to spend it. I mean, that's just, the
Yeah.
thought
Yeah.
process behind it, right? So the
Right.
idea behind that is low costs index funds, low cost mutual funds. An index fund, S&P 500 index fund is a fund that invests in a small portion of all of the S&P 500 companies in the United States, right? And that's kind of so what we're doing is we're kind of counting on the United States to be successful as a whole. We are not
Right.
investing in a technology stock that may go up and down. We are saying, hey, we're a part of this economy as well, and we're going to invest in this. And over time, right, we're understanding that the U.S. economy, based on its past, will be continuously prosperous. I don't know if that helps you.
No, that
You have
did.
to look
So
at
so when you
low
said
fee
Vanguard,
funds.
a Vanguard, that's like a mutual fund?
So they have all kinds of different funds. So
Okay.
the idea is Schwab, Vanguard, and I'll send these over to Susanna, some links that you can find.
Yeah, I
But the
have Schwab when
idea
they
is, right, Money, I
yeah.
want you to remember that you should have the 3 to 6 months of cash on hand before you're focusing on this next goal. Okay? So I want you to think about that. That should be a goal prior to you investing. We want to make sure that we're not, right, we're not getting there's stuff that's not going to cause us to not invest monthly, right? And we're going to have that buffer in that space. Okay?
So leaning into the small debts, then the medium debts, the high interest debts like loans and things like that. Once that's all cleared, then it's the time to start investing. That would be
Yeah,
the
I mean, I
final
would
step.
invest if my employer had a match I would not let that go. I would be investing what my employer matched, right?
Absolutely.
Past that though, we're always thinking about the investment, but we're not taking care of ourselves in the moment, right? And what happens is when something happens, right? You get in a car accident, or maybe something closes, a place of employment closes, right? And there's no buffer, right? There's no safety for you, and that's where I want people to be first before they start investing.
Cool.
Got
Thank
it.
you.
So helpful.
Anyone else
Thank
have
you.
a question? Sure. Anyone else have a question? You can just raise your hand. You can unmute yourself. Totally fine. Let's see.
Hi, it's Jane. I actually have a question. I've been
Okay, great.
sneezing over
Thank you.
here, so I've turned my camera off.
God bless.
Bless
Thank
you.
you for this great information. I'm curious about a program to track expenses. I have a small business. I've been using QuickBooks, but they keep raising the price, and it's way more than I need. So I want to be able to categorize what we're spending every week, every month, so that I can see how we're trending and where the money is going. Do you have a recommendation for that?
Well, I mean, you're using QuickBooks because of the tax software that comes along with it. Is that what you're saying?
No, more.
Okay.
I mean, it allows for invoicing and some other small business
Sure.
documentation and paperwork. But really what I'm using is the ability to categorize each expense, so is it gas for my car for business, or is it gas for my husband's car? But
Understood.
then the ability to print reports so that we can see like where is the money actually going categorically.
Yeah, I mean, I can share with you that budget, right? And I use Excel. I think it's in a Google Sheets doc, right? And the idea behind how I categorize my cash flow and my budget is that every month there's a new tab, and I copy it and paste it from the previous month, and I do it pretty old school in that regard. And I do that for my business as well. And you know. I understand the cost and the fees. I think that um, if we go into a different development software, those fees are probably going to be adjusted as well, right? Just based on what assets they provide, right, for you, like the reports. To me, my philosophy is that I should know, right, that I'm going to give gas a dollar amount before I spend the gas, right? So I'm looking at the receipts and saying, I'm getting to a point where I'm going to exceed. Now, maybe you have to go up to LA for something. That money needs to come out of a different line item. I don't know if that answers your question, Jane, but I'm a little old school when it comes to that because I like to kind of click on it on a fairly regular basis.
It does answer the question, and I understand sort of the zero budget. But what I'm also looking for is something that allows me to download my bank transactions and categorize those. So it sounds like maybe,
Understood.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
So like
QuickBooks
I
is
said,
I
I
mean,
mean, it's
I can just
perfect
mention
for
it
that.
because we use it for, we use it for our
Yeah,
nonprofit, obviously, and
yeah.
it can be tricky. You kind of need a little bit of training on it and all of that, but the opportunity to be able to download the reports that you're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
that is sort of like the best case scenario. Unfortunately, I haven't found another platform, and we've searched, so I don't know, Brian, if you have others, that
I
you can
really
recommend. But
don't.
we've gone through various opportunities of platforms, and this seemed to be the best fit for a small for a small business and a small nonprofit
Mhm.
to date. But we
Thanks,
welcome
Susan.
other ideas if somebody else has
Yeah,
found
does anyone else
anything.
have a space in place for that?
I found something that works for me. Sorry, my name is Steffi. I am
Hi, Stephanie.
driving, just about to pull over. Um, I I bank with credit unions pretty much exclusively.
Mhm.
And my credit union back home, I'm from Chicagoland. Uh, it's called the DuPage Credit Union, and they allow me to look at what I'm spending, how much I'm paying for gas, how much I'm paying for entertainment, groceries, things like that. And it really helps me to figure out, because for a long time, and kind of getting to your point like earlier in the presentation, I wasn't sure how much I was spending. I was like, okay, I know I pay this much for rent, I pay this much for gas, like, but I wasn't sure until I took a deep dive, because I realized I'm like, I need to do something. I need to create my budget. And so I took a deep dive and I realized I was paying a good $1,000 more than I thought I was paying every month, like on average. I was like, oh.
That's a bonus. That's a raise right there, Steffi.
No, I was spending more than I thought. But anyway, so
Yeah.
I was like, all right, so I need to up my income, and I've known that for a while. I mean, and as a creative, as somebody who owns their own business, and it's hard for me to even think about, I mean, I have a Roth IRA, and it's hard for me to even think about contributing. Like, I haven't contributed, in a while, a long time. And it's like hard for me to even, have that conversation of like how to have that cash at hand so that I can start investing, so that I can start to, put away for retirement, like, because I'm in survival mode right now. And so my question is, like, as someone who's in survival mode, it's still like really early in my business. I'm still within like the first 3 years. And like, how do I, like, I guess, make the best of like the income I do have? Like, if I'm barely scraping by, like, should I be taking every paid invoice and taking 15% of that and trying to save it off the bat? Or like, I guess, like, what advice do you have?
I think that the first thing you have to do is look at your percentage spread, right? Which was the 50%, 50 to 60% of fixed costs, right? We have to understand where we are there so that we can make some decisions based on that, right? And that is your vehicle. What is that costing you? Unfortunately, is that the right vehicle for you, right? Are you, the apartment that you're in, right? Your living expenses. This isn't forever. You just said that you're starting you're 3 months into a business. Congratulations. That's incredible, right? But this is a
3 years.
season, right? This is a season that you need to kind of think about based on your financial identity, right? Which is a little bit different than your business identity. And I think that you have to, when you do that and you break out, you're going to very clearly see, where the large spending is happening, right? And unfortunately, if we don't raise our income, we have to reduce those large chunks, right? It's not about the Starbucks every day. However, right, that is something that we have to look at, over time and see what that looks like for us investing in a year, right? And something I want to remind you about that Roth IRA is you can put very, very little money into it. And again, it's the habit that you're forming by putting a small amount in. When you do hit your 6-month, 1 year mark, and you're doing, you're becoming more and more successful, right? Because it's on the line, you're now thinking about it and you're able to slowly increase that. And maybe it's to $15, right? But there's going to be a point in time where then you're going to be able to hit that 15% mark. But again, it's building the habit and making sure that it's in the conversation with the people around you, right? Jane, Rocket Money is great. And thinking about phone apps, EveryDollar is another phone app that is really great, that all that information comes from. So there are definitely, Mint has just stopped their use. Mint was a decent app in the past. The problem I have with those is that we also, like, it takes a while for you to make sure that everything is allocating correctly. So I think if we dump it all in and we're like, okay, we're all set, it may be giving us some false information. So just be careful about those online apps to make sure that the line items, again, maybe you're double checking it once a week, on a, you know, on a specific night, you're double checking it in some sort of spreadsheet. And that would be a lot easier for you to do from a phone app too for that. But the double check to me is important for us to really catch ourselves. Like Steffi said, hey, I didn't realize this money was going out. It just wasn't, it wasn't part of my weekly routine, my monthly routine. So it was just being dismissed.
Yeah, I just want to double click on a couple of things that you just said. Like one of them is the unexpectedness that you were spending an additional $1,000 a month, and Brian looking at it as a plus, as a bonus. Like, oh, that means that I have $1,000 extra each month that I didn't know that I had, you know, that I could be saving. Or, but also just the other thing was the habit forming. You know, if it's just $5 a month, most people can put that aside, but it's the habit, it's the automation of that action consistently going in that direction. And then when you feel comfortable making it $8 or $15 or whatever, but it's just the habit forming. It's like when you say, I want to drink more water, it's just the habit of drinking more water. It's the habit of taking a walk every day that all of a sudden then you, because you've made it a habit, all of a sudden now you're like, oh, I need to, now I want to go on that walk every day. I want to have that water because I've noticed that it makes me feel good, right?
Yeah, there's a point in time where when there is a buffer, when there is margin, right, you're more excited to see the number in your account than the thing that you want to spend it on, right? And then when you're at that, that's not going to happen tomorrow. And that's the unfortunate part about this conversation, right? But there's going to be a point in time where you're like, wow, this feels really good. And right now I have some flexibility. I think,
yeah.
Jesus, did you have a question? I saw your hand slightly.
I know. I wasn't sure. Sorry. Hello, my name is Jesus, mid-20. I am a school cafeteria worker for the city, but I'm kind of having a bit trouble with, other than job-wise of, you know, I've been working for food industry and customer service industry. Honestly, compared to my little brother who now high schoolers are getting financial awareness in classes, I was like, man, I'm jealous of you guys. Here's me as the eldest son and helping a divorced single mother who's also, we're both helping each other learn about financial stuff. We got done paying our car loan a few months back. You know, kind of almost kind of looking at it as like the small snowball method, but sometimes we still feel illiterate with financial awareness and stuff to do, because honestly, it's like, you know, as much as we all, you know, want money, but, you know, I come to the terms like money comes and go, especially retirement awareness, because my mom is really starting late in her 40s, because, you know, no one kind of guided her in a way. And I'm sort of little guided right now by her side of like, with what work offered me of like the school district. But, you know, honestly, it's more of like kind of how confusing my financial is, especially like I have State Farm. My mom's like literally trusting me all the monies when, knock on wood, she goes and it's like, this is what I'm all leaving you. I'm like, I don't even know like 80% of like what she's telling me of what the financial stuff she's learning and like whatever retirements that she sort of may have be building up. It's like, make sure you take my username and password with so-and-so account and like other things before you close it down, transfer it to your name. And it's like, it's crazy because like I'm still trying to learn like Equitable. I just recently started that of something supposedly covering like without government touching that taxes along with my other IRA. And then my Cal Savers, it's like, I've been on and off that because like I literally forgot, like I work with also fast food like McDonald's, and it's like, they started me with it. And then next thing you know, I leave because, you know, hours weren't working, something happens. And then now I'm like, I'm not hearing from this other McDonald's like, oh, Cal Saver thing. So, and also been slowly doing Acorn. So I have like so much thing, but I'm glad to hear, even though I was a little late joining the class, I'm glad to hear the option of like, pretty much you just need this grafting of like QuickBook or something to just, I need to organize and look at the things. So I'm just kind of like wondering if there's like any other, you know, guidance you can sort of give of like for someone still starting new literate, other than just what I've taken notes of, like the snowball method and some saving, because I'm a big saver, as my mom tells me. Like literally growing up as a kid, you know, she gives me $5 for just to last a week, and then she gives me another one $5, and it kept growing. That, you know, by the end of the month I'm stuck with $100 just for like, oh, there's an event coming up, like a high school dance or something before. And it's like, oh no, I got the money to cover it, mom. Oh, really? How? I saved the money you gave me like throughout the month and stuff just to save for this particular day. Before, you know, I started working at 13 years old and like kind of slowly get aware of the grown up, you know, world and stuff. Other than, you know, right now I'm looking into career change wise and kind of want to be more invest with financial awareness. So I'm just glad with the Facebook groups I follow, you know, with events they posted of financial stuff. It's like, I want to take as much, you know, programs to just study myself and share it with my mom before eventually, like, I want to pass that knowledge on to future generation. Because honestly, I mean, as much as the high school, I don't know how it varies. The future looks very unpredictable, especially with new generations, how they're coming about these days.
Yeah, so to me, everything that I just heard, right? I think that it's incredible that you and your family are working on this together, right? And I think it's, you know, it's, you need a network to help, right, as a group. So I think that that's really, really, really helpful, right? So what I would ask of you for right now is I would ask for you, all of you are, it seems like you're living in the same household, or even if you're not, I would say sit down once a week at the table and talk about this, right? And be able to start asking, you know, all of you start asking questions about this. Now, I heard a couple things. Definitely if you're in food service, there's so much space for you to grow, right? And to make a pivot. And right now we're coming into summer tourism season. So if you have any food service experience, right, all of the big players, which will be probably paying more, are looking for summer help. So I think, again, you can decrease your saving, or increase your saving, which it seems like you're doing, decrease your spending, and increase your income. Those are really the three variables that we have, right? And I think that over the summer, you could probably double your hourly income based on the industry, especially right now as we move into the summer season. So, you know, you got to keep that in mind and think about that for your future, because, you know, give yourself a goal, use the spreadsheet, double your salary, see how much space there is for you to do the things that you want to do. And maybe that will motivate you to be able to push into something new. And I wish you the best of luck.
Okay, thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you. Your instincts are right. You're a really good saver. I'm a very good saver as well. And I also just recently started going into like estate planning and that world that I had never been introduced to in my life before. But you're young enough that, you know, you're look much younger than I am, and you're already learning this. So now I'm jealous of you that you're starting this journey so young, when it took me, you know, 46 years to start figuring it out. So, you know, don't be hard on yourself. Instead, feel empowered that you are now starting this journey and creating a new financial legacy for your family.
Yeah. One thing I do want to mention too is be sure that margin is first, right? I heard that you mentioned Acorn. Wouldn't recommend Acorn. To me is a investing app. It feels more like a gambling app, right? That you would play for on a casino, right? I wouldn't necessarily focus on that. Let's create some margin. You're working for the school district. That school district probably has a retirement if you stay there, right? There possibly may even be a pension associated with that space in place. We want to think about, right, long-term focus and much safer investments. And that's fun. You can put money in a line item and play with that. But to me, that investment strategy is scary if you're struggling with what you were saying, kind of more of the day to day. You're taking money that you could be just stashing away for a rainy day, and you're investing it in something that's vital, that may not necessarily give you the return that you want.
Okay, and another thing too is for anyone, for someone that's like me, looking at a career change, pretty much, let's say you had, again, my example, I work for a school district, but say, I quit my my school career, switched to a different one. I've been actually looking into police forces and all that and stuff. So how would you recommend someone, that has at least think, because I'm sure everything that I have account, my RIA, my retirement, CalSaver, Equitable, all those kind of future retirement saving financial plans, how would you sort of help someone new to transfer, into a different, work area, if you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, it's not gone, right? And what the first thing you may want to do is if you're going into a police, a law enforcement, they may actually absorb that, right? Because you're going from one public, right, public space to another, right? I'm in academics, right? If I went to another school, my retirement would follow me because I'm in the same system. That would be the best case scenario. And then you would want to start up your secondary retirement fund. But again, I think we're talking about retirement a lot, and I want to make sure that we have that savings space there first.
Yeah, maybe you want to pull up that slide again, Brian, because it really is important to kind of remember priorities first. And somebody mentioned it's just a season. I think, Brian, you said that, it's just a season. Like, this is not the long term, this is how I'm going to live my life now, scarcity mindset. It's quite the contrary. You're trying to eliminate debt. You're trying to eliminate high interest loans first. And it's going to take a little struggle for a few years, but listen, March 13th, today, is the 4-year anniversary of COVID. Didn't that just feel like it happened yesterday? I mean, did we even live it? Some people are like, what? Did we even go through that? But time goes fast. Think about how quickly time goes by. If you dedicated, 2 years of your life to really targeting these, the loans that you have with the high interest or the debt that you're carrying, you can knock it out and then start transitioning into this place of saving for the future and investing in a Roth IRA and all these areas.
Yeah, and again, society is telling us that this is the most important thing, right? For sure, there's no question about that. However, if I have a medical bill and I can't afford it, that's going to go on a credit card, and now I'm paying Chase or Bank of America or Capital One for my injury, right? And we want to stay away from that. That is where we get in the way. And to me, a big scenario, a big thing that keeps people from moving into the next class, to be honest, is how Americans love their vehicles. And it's the way that we are marketed to, our vehicle is our identity. And I did some calculations on how much time my vehicle sits on the side of the road, right, and collects dust. It's a lot more time than you think. Do that calculation. Add up the number of hours that your vehicle does not move, and think about how much you're spending for that vehicle to sit in a parked space. It will shock you. So, any other questions?
That's interesting. Okay, other questions? Please go ahead and you can just unmute yourself. You can drop the comment in the chat if you don't feel comfortable, going on, and I can refer the questions over. Yeah, what have been resources that you're sort of curious about that you maybe are using right now and you're not sure if you're going down the right path, if you're using the right program, if maybe one of those investing apps that all of a sudden you realize, you're maybe realizing now is a little bit more like gambling, or, is there something out there that you're using already that you would just want to check in to see if it's a strong choice or not? You can drop it in the chat or. And if you're done with questions, that's totally fine too. But we have time. We have here until 1:30 that we're open to discussion. And Brian, the what did you call it? The budget,
Zero-based budget.
zero-based budget sample. We need access to it. That's the only one that
Oh,
didn't
okay. I'm
open
sorry.
the link. So
I'll
whenever
put
you
that.
get a not now, but when you get a chance, we'll be sure to send this all to you as well. Anybody? Okay.
Questions? I saw Zara in the chat. Do you have any questions, Zara? You had some really great information that you were providing.
I'm curious to what industries you're all from. If you can just drop it in the chat, like what are your are you a film, theater, dance, visual arts, music? What is your sort of biggest challenge if you're in the gig economy,
Yeah, I mean,
Got
consistency,
artist, author.
consistency of pay and growing up in the hospitality industry, that was a big struggle for me, that it wasn't consistent week to week. And I think that unfortunately, we have to look at our worst week in, right? And we have to be most gracious about our what we're spending, right? And have that balance so that the rest can go into these automated spaces of our savings plans, right? If we're doing that, it's really great that at the end of the month we have excess. We can then go back up, right, up the spreadsheet and say, where do we want to spend this money? And we can get to the top. We can add it more to savings. We can add it to other aspects. So
Yeah, we've
thanks.
got people here in the film industry. We've got artists, authors, and let's see, it says, I'm a female entrepreneur. I run 2 short-term rentals, artist, run a massage therapy business, also single mother, a lot of hustle, trying to set life up right now so I can retire early with properties I purchased, looking to buy one more. Wow, well, see, you're a homeowner and everything, property owner. That's amazing. I really admire and I bring up my mom sometimes too, in different scenarios, because she's not somebody that could tell me like how to manage money or finance management or future planning or anything like that, but she taught me hustle. Like, I know how to work hard, and that's also one of the things that it takes, right? You have to be able to work your butt off for a couple years to get that debt out of your way. And having strong finances does not necessarily mean that you're now living this fancy life that you see on Instagram. It's really just about security and freedom, the freedom to stop when you need to stop, to take a break, to go outside and enjoy and not have to go to work if you don't want to. So it's that FU money that we're, kind of talking about. So being contractors is actually kind of a privilege. If you think about it, you're not stuck to this sort of salaried, position. And because you've chosen these careers and it's your passion and the thing that you must have, to make you whole, you might as well make some money off of it and not be afraid to make money off of it. And one of those things is like, stop working for free. Artists always, they're like, oh, exposure, here's an opportunity for exposure. Well, you can die of exposure. You need to be able to own your financial freedom. And this is the very first step in that. Here we have artists that, let's see, Jim, I need to teach this to members of the Colorado Veterans Arts Council. Best idea, way to go about it. Most are a financial mess. Well, you can certainly share this video with them for sure. And we've dropped so many resources for you in the chat. Hopefully you're catching on to those or saving them for yourself.
Back to Jim's point, I think that we are constantly inundated with just bad content. Susanna and I were talking about, right, the content that we are surrounded by. So I think that we have to really, really think about when we are clicking on social media and looking at it, if we're not comfortable with the content, we need to kind of change that. And I sent you some individuals that I think have a very similar mantra. And it's really, it's simple to, to say, spend less than you make. It's a lot easier when you're constantly watching content that's telling you the same thing over and over again. It's definitely something that has helped me in my journey. So,
Yeah, I dropped all of those social media finance influencers into the chat as well. So, if you are a person that loves social media and that's a part of your world, I did something a couple of years ago where I really started kind of rethinking my approach to money and my relationship to money. Um, it's really interesting. And I really started reading a lot about it because I thought, okay, I'm done with this whole thing of working for free. I'm done with all of this. It's time to start getting paid. It's time to, give value to the work that I'm doing. And so I went down this path and I started curating my social media feed, just like if you click something even out of morbid curiosity, all of a sudden the algorithm will start sending you all this crap that's similar to what you clicked. Well, similarly, you can start clicking things that are related to financial management and, getting a hold of your personal finances. If you're in the nonprofit world, follow nonprofit leaders and nonprofit executives, that are sharing this kind of, resources with you. And so now my feed, of course, still includes that junky stuff because it's part of what they do. But
yeah.
the majority of it is content that is fulfilling to me and that grows me as an individual, as an entrepreneur, as a nonprofit leader. So, don't mistake that you have the power to also develop that for yourself, so that when you're scrolling, at least you're getting some content that's going to benefit you. So we dropped a bunch of recommended influencers here on the site on the chat as well.
To Zara's comment here, I would like to just make sure that you look at that spreadsheet, right? And the percentages of what you should be spending and saving. Lots of debt. You have two rentals. We want to make sure that there's breathing room there, and that spreadsheet will allow you to plug those numbers in and see where you're at with that space, right? With what's coming in versus what you're paying off on your debt. And I understand that it's a really great opportunity to have these, but there's a lot of work, as you know, that go into having rentals, whether it be a monthly rental or an Airbnb. There's a lot of work that goes into those. And we just have to be realistic about, is it the right investment? And we have to let the math tell us, right, whether it was a good decision or not, or how I can manage that decision. So be sure to look at that and just run the numbers.
Yeah, it's so important to just understand what your expenses are, and a lot of people don't have. That's step number one. If you haven't done that, do that first. Get there.
Yeah, real estate is tricky, especially when we're living in San Diego, the two of us. We have to be thoughtful, right, about what that now looks like for us, right? Which is unfortunate to say, but again, we have to let the mathematics kind of dictate whether it's a smart decision or not. And we know that when we buy a home, right, there are costs associated with that are not right that are not talked about, right? When we are renting, it is a cost, and yes, that cost is that cost is minimized. We're not investing it. However, there's no hidden agenda when you're renting. The rent, yes, may go up, but there's no roof costs, there's no electrical costs, there's no plumbing costs. So we have to be realistic again about running numbers. There's a really great loan calculator that will allow you to kind of do some calculations. And I say the same thing about when you buy a new car. When you buy a new car, you wash it more. You spend more money on the car because it is new, and we have to think about those things, right? And again, being able to maximize whether that was the proper financial decision, and possibly selling it if it's not the right financial decision. You know, and buying a car versus leasing a car. Leasing a car sounds really great. It may sound really great when you're starting a new business. And when you lease a car, the first initial lease seems great because it's a lower cost. However, when you go into the second lease, you have no equity to put onto the next car price. So your lease is definitely going to go up. There's no question about that. So that is these are the tricks, right? The society tells us to do one thing, and really, it's not a smart financial decision.
That's so interesting. I mean, it makes me think about, you know, living in New Jersey when I was a young gal, and I was trying to do the struggling, you know, actor thing, taking the train into New York City every weekend to go do the gigs, and then coming back and working, and you know, this whole thing. But nobody needs a car in New York. People, you know, places that have fantastic transportation.
Yeah.
But now with the rise of like Uber and Lyft, it's kind of changed everything, and it's making me think about people who are now in hybrid mode that work from home a lot, who actually are not using their car. Like I'm not using my car all that much, you know. And in theory,
Right.
if I didn't have kids, I probably could get away with just Ubering everywhere.
Right.
So that's kind of
And
interesting to
or
kind of,
and or do you need the vehicle that you have? I think it's just a
right.
simple question to ask ourselves, right? Do we actually need that, right? Because maybe, you know, how many times I have children's too. How many times do we need the entire trunk? Right? You know, and is that
Mhm.
something? So these are questions that we just have to ask, you know, do I need this second bedroom in my home? Yes, it's very nice to have people over. How many times do we have people over? Right? These are the little intricate questions that we have to ask ourselves to say, and let that 50%, you know, 50% amount of what's coming in just really resonate with you, and you can really stop and think about those conversations.
Yeah, this is all just about building your sort of the picture, you know, understanding the financial picture of where you stand. This is your opportunity to raise your hand or unmute yourself if you have any other questions. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Really, really wonderful questions. And you know, if you're curious about something, chances are that many other people are too shy to ask the same questions. So please, this is a safe space. Feel free to unmute yourself or add something in the chat here. You know, the goal here is to give you all the resources and the opportunities to make a living doing the thing that you love, which is creating beauty and art for the world. And it's so needed. And especially, you know, if you think about when COVID hit, since I mentioned it, you know, when COVID hit, everybody was most people, unless you were a first responder, were stuck in their homes, and everybody all of a sudden was like, you know, I've always wanted to learn to bake, and I've always wanted to learn to play the guitar. And all of a sudden, you know, people went back to the soul of who they were, which is creativity. And they were desperately in need of beauty and creativity online, you know, either online or on TV. No one was making movies anymore. We were watching crap, right? So just remember like how important the work that you do is. Don't ever dismiss it and think that it doesn't deserve to be paid for, that you don't deserve to be paid for the work that you do. Okay, well, thank you all so much. It sounds like we're done with questions, but please feel free to follow up. I'm going to send all of these links back in a follow-up email. You can expect the video in a few days, and we'll be sure to link you to all the resources and content that you shares. And thank you again for, you know, Brian, thank you. What an honor to have you in
Oh, my
our,
pleasure.
you know, lineup of amazing speakers in our forum series. You've just been so generous with your time. Thank you so much. Thank you all of you for being here. And thank you all you creative professionals out there for sharing your talents and creativity with the world. Creative professionals are doing very important work right now, and you deserve to make a living doing what you love. Don't you forget it. Okay. Thank you all very much, and be well. Have a great day.